What is going on YouTube? This is Acid Root. So I'm going to review the third album by rock band New Found Glory. Basically, this project is called Sticks and Stones, and it came out in the late spring of 2002. The thing about this particular product is just the fact that New Found Glory had kind of had a couple hit albums. They helped revolutionize punk. They were a factor to help contributing to paving out punk music's popularity in the late 90s and early 2000s. Some pitches like that. I had to say in particular they had kind of a cult album in their 1999. They had kind of like a cult album in their 1999 album. And they also appeared in like the movie American Pie 2 or something like that. It says Wikipedia says that they were featured in the film American Pie 2. So it might have been the soundtrack, might have been the movie. It's been a while since I've seen that movie, but just being able to say in particular, they were affiliated with that. Had some hit albums, had a particular hit single that was pretty large in 2001 called Hit or Miss. Pretty good concept. Get some of that in particular, some dope concepts kind of get. This is one of their bigger albums. I feel like Catalyst from 2004 might be slightly bigger, but this had more singles towards it, I'd have to say, or at least it didn't have more singles, but had more charting appeal. I'd have to say definitely the song My Friends Over You had some of their biggest popularities in terms of the rotation that it particularly kind of got. Definitely one of their biggest songs. I do feel like the hit single from their 2004 album did pretty good. I forget what it's called in particular. I'll probably put that in the connotation. But this is pretty good concept here. It's a pretty balanced album, but I'd say definitely the concept behind this album definitely reminds me of like Trapt and Alien Ant Farm, some of those types of stuff. It's not necessarily new metal and pitches like that, but it does kind of have some of that alternative metal. It does have some of that alternative metal kind of swashness that's kind of similar to like just kind of a cross between Alien Ant Farm and Blink 182. I'd have to say in particular some of those type pitches, folks like Trap, some of them I'd have to say. So it's a concept very similar to Blink 182, but also has some of that alternative metal tinge towards it. It's just an interesting concept kind of get here because this is definitely some summer malaise. This is definitely kind of like a summer. This is definitely like some summer frolicking and pitches like that. It's an excellent album to kind of listen to for students kind of during summer vacation. This pitches like that. It's kind of the concept of some summer frolicking between like about late April to about early October pitches like that. I'd say just some excellent concepts. Just some excellent concepts kind of get here. Pretty balanced project, I'd have to say. I mean, I wound up recommending off this particular album 2/3 of the product. So there's 12 songs on here on the standard edition. I'd have to say, and out of those 12, I wound up recommending 8. So it's pretty dope concept. Get this in particular. Definitely had some. I recommend all of the singles. Pretty good pitch to kind of get. Now Wikipedia only says that there were 2 singles, but there was actually like a third single I think was at least attempted. It just didn't take off the ground as highly as it needed to, but still pretty good concept. Kind of get that. But this is definitely like a punk. This album's definitely like a pop punk and punk music highlight. I'd say it's up there probably with like maybe not as sheer full blown in quality, but definitely pretty close to like Enema of the State by Blink 182. Some of those type ones, Dude Ranch, some of those type ones in particular. Some of the ones like the Young and the Good Charlotte's 2002 album pitches like that. I mean, punk was pretty huge 2002. It's just the concept when you saw some of those college rock and just romping type movies, as far as that particular kind of goes. Movies like American Pie 2. This is the sort of concept. This should take you immediately back to 2002 as far as that pitch kind of goes, especially when you hear the hit single My Friends Over You. Just has a real distinct kind of riff, one of the signature type ones of the early 2000s, definitely one of the bigger rock songs at that particular time. It's too bad that New Found Glory hasn't had many charting hits like the United States. I'd have to say they've only had about 4 or 5, something like that, in terms of like the rock charts and pitches like that. 2 of those songs are on this particular album, so it's just kind of constant. They've dropped loads of singles. They're active even today. They continue to put out albums. But I think most folks probably think that their heyday was probably between about the year 2000 or 1999 to about 2004 or so. I'd have to say they kind of switched their style up supposedly on their 2006 album, and then their albums just didn't chart after that particular point, I'd have to say. But I do definitely feel like this is definitely a pretty supreme type project here. Even though it's not going to get like a 9 or a 10 out of 10, I still would say it's pretty excellent. Definitely a signature type one and a seminal punk album just for the early 2000s, I'd have to say. So it's a dope concept. I kind of feel like there's just some good stuff on here. Once again, like some great summer beer type music and just picnic and barbecue type music. Picnic and barbecue type music to kind of have in particular for like some summer cookouts and just overall smoke sessions, pictures like that. Just getting pizza and barbecue, some of those types of things. I'd say smokes and swishers, some of that type of stuff. But the first single was My Friends Over You. Now this, like I was saying, this is a pretty vintage. This is definitely a pretty distinct hit. This is like a vintage kind of 2000s punk summer single. I'd have to say in particular. It's like a good neighborhood romp and frolicking type tune, I'd have to say in particular. And this is just good for like some hot day antics. So this really feels like a good one to just play all summer throughout that particular vibe. I think definitely 20 something years ago, this is probably a song that was just on all the time. Probably got a lot of airplay pitches like that. This is a song that broke even with like the Billboard 100, not just the rock charts, but it was also on the Billboard charts as far as that particular kind of goes. Kind of similar to like Headstrong by Trapt and some of those type ones, and the song by Alien Ant Farm, which I think was like the Smooth Criminal, the Michael Jackson cover as far as it particularly kind of goes. It's just this is one of those ones. It's not to say that Newfound Glory was like a one hit wonder, but this is definitely one of their signature type songs that almost puts them in that relative light. It's the same thing that happened with like Fountains of Wayne and Good Charlotte and some of those type folks that had the same particular. They would get like a huge hit single, MTV staple, some of that type of stuff. I'm sure that My Friends Over You, the music videos probably played all over MTV and VH1, some of those type places, but definitely pretty distinct. But this is really hooky. I'd have to say, just the concept of it, just really this really symbolizes and embodies summer in a lot of good pitches. But it just didn't carry. The rest of this album didn't have the ferocity. I mean, I feel like Understatement had some of that ferocity, but in terms of like that anchored kind of chorus, didn't quite deliver as well. I'm not going to say this album's like a one hit wonder because it definitely has. It has the hits on here. It's just kind of the concept. The chorus is just the affability just behind the pep and the riffage on here, just in terms of the distinction. It's just not as quality as that particular song. I would say some pretty good stuff. So Head On Collision's the second single, and this is the last one that Wikipedia lists, but I do feel like Understatement was the third single, I would definitely have to say. But Head On Collision's a nice one. It's not in the same snap and overall veracity of My Friends Over You, but it's still pretty good concept. It's like a dreary kind of summer evening haze of a song, I'd have to say. This is an overlooked hit single, I would definitely have to say. It's just some good workship dredge, and it's kind of similar to Trapt stuff, I'd have to say in particular. So when you think of Trapt, their hit single Headstrong, and then you think of the next one, which was, I forget what that song was called. I think it was Still Frame or something like that, where Still Frame was kind of a relative hit single, did pretty good job, but just not compared to like Headstrong as far as that kind of went. That's kind of what happened with Head On Collision, I'd have to say in particular. It's a good concept. This is definitely a more dreary type one. I'd say that My Friends Over You is definitely like pitch of the afternoon, pitch of a summer afternoon, like noon, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, just on a scorching kind of heat type day, I'd have to suppose. But Head On Collision, it's a little bit more of like a dreary type one, more of like 5:30, 6:30 p.m. It's like the sun starting to set, pitches like that, just more kind of malaise type fashion. Just kind of just got done with works and pitches like that, not just quite, just not amongst like the moment, like the heat of like the day as far as a particular kind of goes. But it's still some good concepts. I feel like this is still pretty relatively good one to kind of get. It's not like it's a bad song, but just the concept. It's just more bewildered, I'd have to say. But I do appreciate the concept behind it. Probably, I think just in terms of the fact that Hit or Miss was just about their own, just the fact that Hit or Miss was like their only huge hit song in terms of like what they, I mean, I don't think that that was their only hit song, but just in terms of like the radio appeal that it kind of had, that was like their only radio hit around the time. They probably should have had another hit that could have competed with My Friends Over You, but it provided some variety towards it. It's just kind of one that's just not necessarily like a ballad, but just kind of more just in like a more kind of stretcher type one to kind of get. It's more of like work shift type fare as far as that would kind of go. Not so much a house party or just more shindig type music. It's just a good concept for Head On Collision. I feel like this was at least a modest type hit, but I feel like they just weren't able to catch the energy heading back into My Friends Over You, which probably almost labeled them in some cases like a one hit wonder entirely, but in some cases just like a one album wonder. But I do feel like Head On Collision's a good 1-2 punch with the two singles on here. Both of these are pretty good. It's just that Head On Collision's a little bit more dreary. And then Understatement's the third single. Now, this one is not as full blown known about as much as being of a single, but I think for folks who remember this band back in the day, there was a music video that was released for this particular song. So I think it was at least attempted to be the third single, but it just didn't catch on nearly as much. I don't know how much airplay it particularly kind of got, but it is a good song. This is like a snappy kind of punk pep of a song that gives some excitement for later on crazy times. I'd have to say in particular, a great concept for that. And this is just a good neighborhood romp. So there's a lot of romping songs on here. If you do like college rock pitches like that, some of that type romping type stuff, just neighborhood frolicking pitches like that, just some summer errands, getting some swishers, some of that type there, getting some pitchers of beer, some of those type of things, going to sports bars and things like that, just in particular as far as that would kind of happen. Just some excellent concepts to kind of get. Just a real thrilling type song to kind of get. This has the energy of My Friends Over You, just doesn't quite deliver in terms of the chorus, I'd say. If it would have had like a hit chorus, something like that, that this would have had like the sheer, and if it just would have had like the sheer kind of earworm quality as far as that particular kind of went, just something real recitable just within that pitch, I probably said this, they would have been 3 for 3. Now, I am going to say that they're 3 for 3 just because this is another quality song, but it's just kind of the concept that it just didn't have the crossover appeal as far as it needed. I just question how many folks realized that this was kind of like a relatively modest, a relatively mild promoted attempt at being like the third single. But I tend to like those particular songs that folks try to put out as like the last ditch effort to promote the project that just doesn't catch on as full blown, but still one that was the one that they would do if they had to go with it. That's some good concepts, but that's kind of the one what happened here. So like I was saying, there were 12 songs in this particular album, and out of those 12, I only did not recommend 4. So 8 out of 12 I recommend on here. So the 4 songs I don't recommend on here would just be Forget My Name, Never Give Up, The Great Houdini, and The Story So Far. which basically to sum those songs out pretty quickly, I just would have to say that all four of these songs, just the riffage and just the overall appeal, some of these songs just doesn't stack up to the normal quality of this particular product. I mean, I feel like at least like the Great Houdini attempts to be like another revved up type song to kind of get in particular, but this doesn't have the same distinction as some of the ones that do it better, like Understatement and like I want to say like Singled Out and some of those type ones, a little bit of like Something I Call Personality, some of those type ones in particular, and It's Been a Summer, some of those type ones. I just the Great Houdini just kind of feels like a factory kind of relatively vanilla type. The Great Houdini just feels like a factory kind of vanilla punk pop type tune, but it just didn't deliver in terms of like the sheer full blown riff. It just feels kind of like modest in terms of like the quality behind it, or just not just a little bit lukewarm, I'd have to say. And some of these other type ones just didn't really have the edginess that I was looking for. They just kind of felt like standard kind of punk type tunes that just didn't have enough edge to really have much distinction. Just kind of felt like, I mean, it's good that they were on an album and stuff, but it was kind of the same similar problem I had with like Blink 182 on Dude Ranch, where some of these just didn't have the distinction of really jumping off the page and being something that really provides like super thrills as far as that particular one goes. Not like these are horrible songs, but they just don't have like the spark as far as being able to say that these are songs that you're going to get tore up to or have some real, these are songs that you're going to get tore up to or have some real revved up kind of vibe, something like that to really have just lasting throughout the day and night as far as that particular kind of goes. And the story so far, I just didn't really like the arrangements of that particular one. It was just kind of one. It was just kind of more of like a tamer type one, but it just didn't pull out the vibes in terms of some of that. I kind of feel like a song like Sunny just nailed it better. That one is kind of similar to Sunny, but just didn't have like the real. I mean, most of this album is just like a jolt of energy for just like a summer vacation or something like that. Just some summer heat, just those type pitches of just relative to just like warm weather outings, gas station fare, picnics, barbecues, some of those type things, and just overall smoke sessions. I'd have to say was this kind of concept. The story so far was just one that just kind of stuck out. Just didn't really jump out. It stuck out like a sore thumb, just kind of more in like a non-distinct kind of way. So that just kind of happens to be a thing. But some of these songs I do recommend on here. So Sunny's a pretty nice one. This is apparently one that had a little bit more of hardship in it. I just kind of listened to these songs relatively quickly, but it is a pretty nice song to get. This is like an in-between kind of work-a-day summer malaise of a song I'd have to say in particular. It's like some typical kind of errands and commute, I'd have to say. And it's like a typical errands and commute day, I'd have to say in particular. This is like a less crunk in mind of a the song is definitely like a less crunk in mind of a song, I'd have to say, but still a pretty fun song. So I like the concept about this one in particular. It's just a good concept, kind of switch it up a bit. This reminds me of something that Trapt or Alien Ant Farm would do, just in a more malaise type sense. This is definitely more evening type fare, pretty similar to like Head On Collision, just more food for thought on your mind as far as that pitch kind of goes. This would have to say some standard malaise type stuff, but it works pretty well for that concept. Just something that has some good songwriting, so it's not just all summer frolicking and just not all summer frolicking and just relationship type fare and some of those type pitches as far as I would kind of have, and just some good stuff. But Singled Out is a pretty nice one. This is like a things getting started kind of heat of a song. I'd have to say this one goes nice with Understatement. I would definitely feel like, and this is just a house party highlight. I'd have to say in particular, and this one's pretty thrilling. This one's definitely pretty nice one to kind of get just for like some standard summer house, just for like some standard summer crazes, just as far as that would particularly kind of happen. Just appreciate the concept of getting some of these type ones, just for some, just the concept of some of this is work shift. I feel like songs like Head On Collision and a little bit of like Head On Collision, Sunny, some of those type ones. I kind of feel like maybe there's like one other one. I guess there's really not as much work shift on here the more I think about it. I suppose that really some of these, a lot of these are just more summer, just kind of kick back and just feel the hair. A lot of these are just more kick back and feel the wind in your hair type tunes. Just get some barbecue, some of those type pitches, I'd have to say. I feel like there's at least a mild amount of work shift type songs, but I do feel like it's just the alternative. There are some commerce type songs to kind of get on here. I feel like Singled Out is at least one of those ones to kind of get ready to get started with some of that type heat. Singled Out, Understatement, and probably It's Been a Summer. And speaking of It's Been a Summer, this is a nice one. This is like a good traverse excitement of a song, I'd have to say. This one definitely reminds me of Blink 182, I would feel like. And this is just some breezy kind of romping music and good for like some local shindigs. Yeah, there's just some good thrilling type ones to kind of get in particular as far as that would kind of happen with it. Just some of those type ones to kind of have like Singled Out and Understatement as far as that kind of happens. Once again, some good just warm weather type fare just within that standard approach. Obviously, with it being called It's Been a Summer, it's just a good concept, but definitely reminds me of Blink 182. Some of those type ones, good Charlotte, just standard punk type music, but it has, for the most part, this album has some pretty good distinction about it. I just would have to suppose it just probably needed another hit single to kind of cap things off a little bit better. Something I Call Personality is a pretty nice one as well. It's like a good stomping grounds type music, I'd have to say, and it's like a local gas station and day activity fair of a song, I'd have to say. So it's a dope enough concept. Definitely gonna get this one. This is just more out and about, just kind of in the summer wind pitches like that, just some standard day activity type fare to kind of have for some of these type moments. This is definitely a busybody type album. This is not one where it's just lazed around when you think of folks like Third Eye Blind or something like that, or there's another one like Marcy Playground's just relative drew or some of those type moments. This is definitely some good concepts kind of get some of these just because it's pretty festive. I feel like the fanfare behind a lot of this is very social, just within the aspects of just being out and about and kind of having commerce just in like the standard frolicking type stuff. Some good concepts. And then I feel like Belated is a pretty nice one as well. It's like a solid revving song, I'd have to say in particular. It's like this is good for like a typical hot day fare, I'd have to say. Pretty dope concept, kind of get that. And this is like a summer outing and kind of vanilla punk music fun, I'd have to say. And this is just some overall good stuff. Belated is kind of one that's in between like Single Out and then like a more song like Sunny or Head On Collision, some of those type fares. I'd have to say it's a good concept, kind of get some of this where it's a revving song. I would definitely feel like it's good for that concept of like some standard romping type music, but just not as ferocious as a song like Understatement, Singled Out, or It's Been a Summer, some of those type ones. But it's just a good one to kind of have just within the outing point of just kind of getting getting the initial thrills and getting started with the summer or some pitches like that. I'd say there's some good concepts, so some good stuff there. But basically, I'm gonna rank this album in terms of me recommending the songs. Me recommending 8 songs out of 12 on this particular album. I'm gonna go ahead and give this album like a 7.75 out of 10. I feel like that's solid enough. Definitely 2/3 of the album. You would think. I mean, it would almost be like an 8 or something, but I kind of feel like it's just kind of the concept that this is relatively. I mean, the concept of this album. I mean, the concept of this album in particular being somewhat of a one hit and one album wonder in particular just kind of has the. I mean, the concept of this album kind of pseudo being like a one hit wonder is kind of something that weighs down this project somewhat in particular. But still, what I'd say it's got some quality on here. I do think that there's a number of hit songs on here that outweigh the concept of it being pigeonholed into something that's kind of limp or not worth it. But I'd have to say in particular, I do think the unfortunate thing is My Friends Over You does shine brightly over most of these songs on here, but I do feel like Head On Collision's a pretty nice one, just doesn't carry the energy in the same way. Understatement's a pretty nice one, but just doesn't have the megaton hook, and there are some other ones on here, but it's just kind of more in the product of it, just more punk music type fare, more so than actual commercial smashes that are just more radio staples, which is a good concept. It's just kind of you have to appreciate punk music more to kind of full blown have like the learning curve for it. It's not just where you're gonna hear 5 or 6 of these songs on the radio like some albums, but it's kind of happens to be a thing. But the social score as a result, I'm gonna give the social as a result. I think I'm gonna give the social score like an 8 out of 10, just because of the fact that there is some quality on here. This is a pretty summer heat of a project that I'd say definitely has tons of these hit songs. Just being able to say in particular just some of that summer frolicking and pitches like that, just good day activity, smoke sessions, barbecue, some of those type fares, just standard activities kind of get just within that sense. It's very much social type project to kind of have for the most part. It's just the fact that the hit singles are just not as full blown widespread as they probably need to be. It's kind of the concept that some folks, when they think of Newfound Glory, might think of them as like one hit or even one album wonders or one hit wonders. Just within that sense, it's just the fact that if you're looking for megaton, if you're looking for like the number ones, the number twos, some of those type pitches, it may not have that full blown, but it does have good music, just kind of more, it's not necessarily in hardcore territory, but it's just in less full blown kind of casual territory, I'd say, but still some good stuff. In terms of the future, like Newfound Glory has put out an album as recent as like the spring or winter of 2023. I'd have to say in particular, they have a number of albums, despite the fact that they haven't charted in quite some time, which is pretty good concept. Get some of these. I'm definitely going to review some more Newfound Glory. I'd have to say, at least their early days, be able to find some more of these hits just to see some of their biggest songs. Definitely, I want to get to the 2004 album Catalyst. Definitely some pitches like that. So there is some excellent concepts kind of get here. This is a pretty solid album. This is a balanced album. Definitely has the hits on here, even if it doesn't have constant megaton hit singles and they may seem like one hit wonders. I still feel like there's some quality stuff, and this is a great summer album.